Hey, welcome back to another edition of the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. Special treat tonight. Deborah Lugo, who's had a number of very interesting positions. We're going to talk about that and talk about her experience doing some of the fundraising and what that means to her. Deborah, thank you so much for being on the program. Thank you for being in our class.
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure.
So Deborah, a lot of interesting things about you, right? One is that sort of a non-traditional undergraduate degree, music. You were sort of thinking that you might work in an orchestra as a musician, and you ended up sort of being the executive director and chief fundraiser for an orchestra. You went off to graduate school, then you worked a little bit doing consulting, and now you're working for young audiences back in the arts. When you think about fundraising and based upon what you've done, it's sort of a smallish organization, what are the important components of fundraising for you, especially when you were at Mercury doing that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're very right. I never thought that I would end up doing fundraising, and here I am. I can tell you by experience that I love it. It's a wonderful profession. The components for an organization to be successful, and it actually varies depending on the organization, but my experience, there were different components, including the contributed income, which is very important and is divided in different categories. For Mercury in particular, in the orchestra that I was with for many years, individual giving was actually the highest category in regards to contributions. The second one was actually foundation giving, which is pretty much developing those relationships and making sure you're making a very strong case in order for them to support you year after year and sending out the reports with the information that they want to see. And then the third one was corporate giving, which was a little bit harder because with those you really have to establish the partnerships and show them not only the benefit that you will be getting, but also the benefit that they will be getting by providing that support.
One of the interesting things is that with an arts organization, people think that a lot of it is going to be based upon ticket sales, that's where a lot of your income comes. What percentage of your income when you're in an arts organization or when you're working in a museum is coming from sort of ticket sales?
It's very low.
I think that's what's sort of interesting.
About 20% for Mercury. I had earned income at 30% when I was there, and I was able to maintain it, but that actually included a little bit of the school support as well, or kind of the classes that we gave. So about 15 to 20% coming from ticket sales alone. Now, there's one more category that I want to make sure I cover, which is the events. And I'm sure you've had many different panelists talking about events.
Absolutely.
For me, and actually for Houston, it was a very important part for the organization. We started at first not having a board that did not want an event, and having a very strong board member that advocated for that. And I think you might remember those days. And then we actually realized that in Houston, a gala becomes not only a fundraiser but a friend raiser, right? So we started making friendships and started doing the event year after year, and it was fun. It was a lot of work, but it actually made for not only getting extra support from corporation, which was actually key, but also getting a higher individual contributions from some of the members that were attending. So for us, it was actually a big component.
So if you look at the big picture, you would add events in. It's an important category.
Yes, especially in this city.
Because there's sort of this divide amongst fundraisers, right? Some people say, oh, it's not worth it to do an event. It takes up too much time, and others are all for it because of the fundraiser part. You and I sort of fall into that fundraiser part.
It's important.
Where we like
It's important. If you want to keep on growing your organization, people knowing about it, you need the friends. You need for them to know. You need for them to participate. It's an opportunity for them to really be able to hear again about your mission.
I want to sort of take a step back. And you growing up, you and I have both had the pleasure of growing up in Puerto Rico. But you growing up in Puerto Rico, and you went to college in Puerto Rico, you wanted to be a musician. Talk about that.
Well, yes, I started playing the violin when I was 11 because my parents just asked me to go into this school that was actually public school. So it was, kind of the famed school in the island. And as I graduated, I actually, you don't know this, but I started doing a music degree and also a chemistry degree.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. Yeah.
And after a year, I realized that music was really my calling. So I decided to drop the chemistry degree and continue into music. So I left the island, went to Florida to study my bachelor's degree in violin performance, and that was wonderful. It was truly a great experience. So I don't know if you want me to keep on going.
Yeah. So now you have your music degree, and you basically think that you're going to be performing in an orchestra. That's going to be your life, right?
Yeah. And well, I wanted that. I also wanted to teach. I wanted to perform and teach. And it's a beautiful career, and it's something that my husband has been able to do. But when I came to Houston, I realized that there was a lot more that I could do. And I started playing with Mercury. At the time, Mercury was only 3 years old, and I decided to offer my volunteer time. And all of a sudden, I kind of became very involved, and the board asked me to be a part-time employee, and then a year after, a full-time employee with the big title of executive director. I was very young at the time and said yes without knowing what it was going to be like. But I was excited for the opportunity. I had truly a passion for the mission of the organization, truly a person that not only felt part of it, but that really wanted to grow it and see it really flourish. So, I decided to accept the opportunity and learn that one of my duties was to do fundraising.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I never saw myself doing this. I really didn't know what it was. Usually what happens when you kind of get into fundraising is that you think that you're going to be asking for money. And I started with that kind of mindset, right? And as I kept on asking for money, I realized that I was not truly doing that. What was happening was that I was helping people help me with my mission. And I just went to graduate college or back to university at my old age. And I had colleagues from all over the world that obviously not being from the United States mean that they truly don't understand much about fundraising. And they were very curious about that part of my career because they were seeing it as asking for money. And when I explained to them that, in particular, I remember a visit that I had with a major donor, where I just sat with him and said, hey, we are thinking about doing this particular program in education that can transform the lives of these children. Can you help out? Is this something that is important to you? Do you see yourself taking part of this and helping us? Helping us not only with money, right? Helping us with your brains. We want to know, what you think about this program. We want to make sure you take part, an important part on the project. And, that was actually my first 3-year gift. We got a 3-year commitment from that family. They're still involved in the project. And I can tell you that at that time I realized it's not the money, it's actually the connection, it's actually the fact that they want to help, and they can either help with time, with brains, or with money, right? And they, some of them choose to do it with all three, and some of them don't have the time, they just can't do it with one, which is the funding support.
I see a lot of young organizations, startup organizations that really want to grow. They want to be prominent nonprofits. And what struck me when I met you, as you were really at the beginning of Mercury, is that you and the artistic director were both sort of hungry for knowledge. And you really wanted to find out what were the best practices, what were the best organizations doing, and how do you learn that? How much is intellectual curiosity sort of a part of your success?
It's a lot of it. It's a lot of it. You have to learn on the job, and you have to be open for new ideas. In the nonprofit world, although people might say that everything has been done, you kind of day after day, you realize that there's some new opportunities that might really arise and might be on the table that you can take advantage of. And for me, that was very important. I think it helped because I was young, because I had not done it, so I really wanted to do the best I could. But even now, today, I continue to do it because I know that there's just no other way that you can bring an organization further with just what you're doing today. There was, I remember one board member at Mercury that you and I know mentioned one time that if the organization is not growing, it's shrinking, it's not staying the same, right? And that was an interesting comment. I don't know that I agree with that, but it has a little bit, I guess he's right in some ways where you have to kind of be looking at that next step at, your budget is are we really, really in line with what we're supposed to be doing, or should we move a little bit further this way or that way?
Very interesting. When you think about that early time for you and you just learning about fundraising, was it sort of a big surprise at how important, for an organization to be called successful, how important fundraising was?
Yeah, it was a big surprise. To tell you the truth, I did not know that people were looking at how well I was doing. If you're growing an organization, you have to make sure that your budget balances. I mean, that's just accounting 101, right? And that was important for me, right? And we knew that with ticket sales we could get here, but we needed to continue to grow, so we had to continue to grow our budget. The way we did it was strategically. We knew how much more every year we could ask. At times, we would stretch a little bit further, actually, and we would hope and work really hard in order to get there. So, I think that fundraising has the aspect of the planning, which is making the case first, right? You have to have a strong case for support. After that, you make sure you plan. And then with the planning, you somewhat just start working really hard in order to make it work. I think you have a question here saying whether I have chapters for your book. And as I thought about that, the chapters are ready, set, go.
That's it for you. Ready, set, go. Okay.
So, ready, get your case for support, set, make sure you have a plan, and go ahead and start doing visits. Talk to people, present your case. If they are aligned with your beliefs, they will help you.
In the early days of Mercury, I remember the board was very instrumental. Board is always instrumental, right, in success. But I remember the first time I went to a board meeting feeling like, this is almost a perfect board, right? There seemed to be no drama. Everyone was on board. Talk about the board, how did you make that happen? But then also, as the years go by, boards change dramatically, adding one or two people. And I ended up being at the end, there was lots of drama on the board. How do these things happen with boards? Because they are so instrumental to the success.
Yeah. Well, board members are wonderful. And one of the things as a director that I understood was that obviously they want to help, but they want to know how they help. At first, it was a working board, meaning that they were all hands-on, doing labeling, kind of in our house, just labeling and printing programs and doing that stuff. As the organization gets bigger and bigger, the demands are bigger and bigger. So you start looking for board members that can truly not really work with the labeling, but open doors, right? So you actually start bringing in a very different type of people. And the opening doors means not only talking to their friends and talking to corporations, et cetera, but also, et cetera. It also means for them to be able to help financially, right? I think that as the organization or as the board transition year after year, we started getting more and more of those very committed, right, board members that really wanted to make a difference, much more with funding than with just hands and brains.
And really, that's what everyone wants in a board, isn't it? You want people who really, you like a funding board.
And there's a balance, how do you don't shift the board all of a sudden. Not all members are new, right? So you kind of, you have working board members at the same time you're bringing in these new people. So it's a difficult balance to keep. I mean, we had drama. I think all boards have drama.
But we like it when there's no drama, right?
It's part of the nonprofit world, so get used to it.
No, but I've been a part of a lot of boards, and I remember it being very striking that those early days about how Oh, there's no drama.
Yeah.
And in a sense, Deborah, I know I was a board member and I was chair of the board, but in a sense, I've used that model. I love no drama on a board. And for a long time, I've had no drama on boards, and you sort of have to manage that drama sometimes because people like drama because people want it to be around them in many ways.
Well, and I mean, the key is really before you ask anybody to serve, you have to truly know that person and understand the dynamics inside the board already.
Yeah. And when you're getting drama, understand what sacrifices are being made. And
that's right.
So that happens. When you look around town, and this is a question that's almost unfair, but we ask this every once in a while. When you look around town and you see a lot of nonprofits, especially some of the smaller arts nonprofits, are there some nonprofits that for you are like, wow, if they had the right staff, they have such a great mission, they're so unique, they could really be doing a lot more. Do you see those around town every once in a while?
I have. Some of them are not alive.
Yeah, they were so good, they had such potential, and then they died.
We collaborated with one in particular that I can think of that is not longer alive, and it truly is a pity because I'm I guess a past artist, and I truly admire my colleagues in the arts. There's so much talent, but being an artist doesn't mean that you understand how to run a nonprofit. It just doesn't make you that executive person. And in particular with this organization, they planned big, and I actually advocate for you to have a case for support that dreams big. That's important. But the plan was not well established. The relationship building was not well established. It was always kind of last minute, help us. And you can do that so many times, right? At some point it's not gonna work. So it's unfortunate, but it has happened and it will continue to happen. The potential was there.
Yeah. And who for you are some of the high performers when you look around at nonprofits, especially since you've been doing some nonprofit consulting? Who are the people that you think, these are models of how to really do it right?
Well, I'm going to go with a big organization first, and that would be the MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts. You probably heard about the new campaign that they just launched or somewhat, made public. They
have some nice supporters, don't they?
Oh my! That was impressive. We were all talking about that because it truly it's a museum that was not that way when I came here 15 years ago. It was kind of getting there, but not where it is today. And I attribute that to the relationship building that Peter Marcio
was the great executive director for many years before he passed away.
It's all about presenting that what you really want to bring to the city, and then making sure that relationship is just always there. It's beautiful. What they've been able to accomplish is amazing. And then a small organization, Mercury.
Of course.
I think they're still doing a wonderful job, actually. So.
Yeah. And they're still in the news a lot. They're still doing a lot of wonderful things. So there's some great organizations around town. If you had to pick sort of the best fundraiser in Houston, who would you pick? Who or which organization?
Oh, wow. I actually thought of that one. The first person that comes to mind is also in the arts, I would say, is Greg Robertson.
Yeah, he was supposed to be on the show a couple weeks ago, and we had to cancel. There was some weather thing or something.
Greg Robertson.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
They just finished a campaign at the Opera that was out of this world impressive, and I met with him right after they were done, and he mentioned that he was already thinking about the next campaign. So, I mean, that's a nonstop, and that actually tells you that he lives in order to make fundraising really successful. That's just his life.
We had John Scales, who's the Director of Development for Texas Children's, another sort of great group. And he also mentioned Greg. He thought Greg was a terrific guy. So I want to go to the Twitterverse and see what students are saying in regards to Twitter and questions that they have for you, Deborah. And are you ready?
I am.
Yeah, because these are sometimes really tough questions. So let's see. Spencer Lightsey always has good questions. He believes that a lot of schools in America have been devaluing the arts. But in your estimation, how do we overcome that? How do we change that this whole idea of schools devaluing the arts?
That's very true. He's right. And I'm actually mean, right now, currently in the job that I started 7 weeks ago after I came back to
Yeah.
Houston, I'm working to change that. The way we're doing it is by pretty much having all the important actors on the table. So we have city leaders, we have arts organizations, we have HISD officials and the board, and we have who else do we have? Universities and funders, obviously. So we're all sitting at the table and deciding, well, assessing the need, what is it that is truly happening with arts education in the schools? And once we have that data on the table, start implementing and changing that, aligning forces to change that in the system. Obviously, advocacy. I believe in advocacy, but I think in order to advocate, you need the numbers. You need to show the results, and you need to also show the need. So we're working on that. It'll take a few years, but he's definitely right. It's very unfortunate, I would say. I am the product of having an arts education that was completely for free, and including my college degree. So I think that we need to go back to where we were and actually go even further.
Wow. I know that you have a lot of experience with bringing the arts into the schools, and I want to know from the philanthropic viewpoint, a lot of arts organizations get money from philanthropies to bring kids down to see one big performance, right? And every arts organization does that, and it's an easy way. The artists are already prepared for a symphony, and they add some education, and it's sort of a nice event, right? The kids love it. But when you talk to the kids, maybe what they loved most is the bus ride down to the downtown, right? And that they were downtown. As opposed to you've also done where you go into a school and for a long term, your organization is doing all the music classes, or you're doing after school programs long term. Obviously the second is more effective. I mean, but which is easier to raise money for? The latter or the former? Because there is a lot of support especially for the bring the kids downtown.
Yeah. I think I think it's changing. Maybe back in the day, adding for an arts organization to add the field trip component and ask for support for that was easier. And yes, you would have gotten pretty much the same amount of money as going back to the schools. I think now philanthropy is changing, and because of the word impact and really demonstrating impact, you really are having grant officers looking at the work that organizations are doing in the schools and truly channeling the funding to that area. I think, as you said, that having that weekly, daily training in the arts or arts education, or using the arts to connect learning, all that is much more powerful than one-time field trip. I do believe in the field trips because it brings them outside of their neighborhood, is that cultural component. I think it's important, but if you were to pick, although it's difficult, I would say that the one in school is much more important. And I think that the philanthropic fabric is going to completely change in the near future, actually.
And everyone loves a field trip, right? I mean,
yes.
no matter where you go, everyone loves a field trip. You could bring them downtown to a cafeteria and they'd be just as happy, I think, sometimes. That's sort of not fair, is it? So, Jennifer Tomasic wants to know, specifically, how do you measure the impact of the Arts Access Initiative, one of the things that you're doing at Young Audiences?
Okay, well, right now we're actually working with researchers at Rice, and we will be pretty much doing both a qualitative and a quantitative, that's too much information probably, but
it's okay.
Research. And it's not really my area of expertise, I would tell you. I'm kind of getting into that right now, but I do know that we do want to measure not only academic achievement, engagement, and also attendance, but we also want to look at the qualitative aspects, so tolerance, empathy, the critical thinking skills, all that good stuff that actually comes by really being engaged through the arts or with the arts. So yeah, it's going to be a big effort. I will not be collecting the data. I will be somebody that really knows that on a daily basis. Yeah.
Well, that's good. And that's sort of an example of collaboration at its best as well,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Which is so very important. Esmeralda Jimenez wants to know, in terms of skills from previous employers, so your skills at Mercury, your skills at Dini, What are the ones that sort of most stand out for you that are helping you in your current job and that you think will help you in the future?
I think, skills, relationship building is a very important one that served me well, both in Mercury, in Dini, actually, and also now would be even more important. I think that also the strategic, I don't know that that's a skill, but kind of strategically thinking about the next steps.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually very important, kind of not only those next few 3 steps, but also how it looks at the end. So the big picture, but yet with a very concrete understanding of the near future, I think is also a skill that I have been able to develop, which is very important for my work on a daily basis. And sometimes it's hard, I would say. Now that I'm new in this job, it's hard kind of to get it to where you want it, right? Let's see.
No, that's good.
You know me well enough.
Yeah, no, that's good. I want to know, you left to go to get a master's degree at Princeton, right? That was a big deal for you because you have young kids and your husband is involved in the arts. And so this was a big sacrifice, right? To say, okay, I'm going to go to Princeton and get this master's degree. Going to Princeton, what were your hopes that would happen? And what did you think would happen when you returned? What did you hope would happen in regards to your employment? And what did happen and what didn't happen for you?
I went to Princeton because I had been thinking about that master's degree for many years. And I finally found the field that I wanted to go into. I wasn't sure which field, and finally I found it.
Probably if this program had been in existence, you wouldn't have left. You would have
That's
stayed.
Right. That's
sure,
right.
Yeah.
So I went there, and it truly opened my mind to all the difficulties that the world is having, you know, and it's not today, it's always been, you know, but just making me aware of those difficulties, and then understanding that you really need to pick an area, right, in order to understand well what the need is, and then go deep, learn more, and change it, create a plan and change it. So, you know, that was very useful for me because I went in with a mindset of kind of maybe transition into something else, you know, maybe working in a social service organization, because I really wanted to change the world, right? I still do. But, you know, as you understand the difficulties and also the deeper understanding that has to be there in order for you to truly make a difference, you realize that you can make a difference in the area that you might already know and you love, right? So when I came back, I had the wonderful opportunity to work at Dini Spheres, which is a consulting firm for nonprofits.
Yeah, Anne Murphy was in our class here a couple weeks ago.
Okay, and she's wonderful,
Yeah, she is.
And you know, I say the wonderful opportunity because it gave me the chance to travel around, I would say, the Midwest and Texas, and see organizations from a very different perspective. I was inside, I was the executive director, I was there on a daily basis. When you become a consultant, you actually just assess what's happening, you see what's on the table, you see how the relationships are, and then you continue to kind of offer advice, right? And offer advice. In particular with Dini, I was working in fundraising. So it was very much focused on campaigns and board development. I would say those were the 2 areas that I focus on. It was a wonderful experience, but to tell you the truth, I got a call from this arts organization and this particular project, and that's dear to my heart. That's really what happened. So yeah. I did not see that coming, but you know, when the opportunity comes, sometimes you have to move with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think you do. Delicia Blanton wanted to know, in terms of strategies for fundraising for arts organizations, both at Mercury and at young audiences, if you're giving advice, if you're back in your consulting role, giving advice to an organization, and they're not doing any of the strategy, what are the best strategies for an arts organization?
Okay, let's see. Best strategy for an arts organization. So Oh, they're just all over the place. One of the things that I learned in consulting, which I did not learn in Princeton, was what I've mentioned before, which is the case for support. I realized when I was there that many of the arts organizations that I was working with, and actually including other organizations, had no idea where they were or where they wanted to go. And it was very difficult for me to understand kind of the next steps that had to be taken if I didn't know exactly what their plan was. So kind of making a case that is strong, right? And then after that, you need to start a list. And that, I mean, in fundraising, that's very, very important. If you're starting an organization, you usually start with friends and family, et cetera, et cetera. If you already have an organization that is established and you are just getting there to work as a fundraising professional, you have to see which are your 25 top donors, right? And start building those relationships. Once you do that, then you start understanding those next 25. And you start building the relationships, and then also understanding what I would say, which that's major gifts, right? But then the other component is kind of that end of the year letter. You know, really seeing which are the people that are giving to this? How can you actually grow them through the pipeline? So you first get them in with the letter. Yes, they gave you a $10 gift. Yes, they gave you a $100 gift. And here you have a person that you can very realistically say, I can call and say thank you and hopefully ask for coffee and grow to make a $10,000 gift. You know, so you kind of need to have strategies in place that are just taking you from that $100 gift, right, to the $10,000 gift. What are those? Well, that phone call, kind of a thank you letter. I mean, those are very important stewardship components that need to be in place.
It's relationships.
It's relationship. Yeah,
absolutely. Jason Covington wanted to know about volunteers. How important are volunteers? Do you need a lot of volunteers? Do you just need a few good ones? What's your sense on that?
Well, board members are volunteers.
Right.
But if you look beyond that, we use volunteers for events. And to tell you the truth, I had volunteers that were fantastic. You have to pretty much give them a job description because it's work. And you want to make sure they know what the expectations are. And they also want to know what the expectations are. So, you know, if you work with volunteers, that will be my number one recommendation. Tell them exactly what you need for them to do in writing. Let's see, I don't, other than that, I don't really use many volunteers in Mercury. And in the position that I'm today, I'm not using volunteers right now.
And how is your board right now at Young Audiences different than the board at Mercury?
Well, Young Audiences is almost 60 years old. So that's a board that has been there for many, many years. I would say it's much more of a fundraising board, right? Where rather than doing the daily work, they're actually just kind of providing oversight and support, opening doors. Mercury's board went through a big transition from the working board through the I would say the fundraising board that it is today, although they're still kind of trying to make that final leap. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say.
Yeah, those are the big differences. Chris Bell wants to know, in terms of the 60 years that Young Audiences has been around, 59 years, what have been really the biggest successes? Why is it still around when so many other arts groups have gone under?
Well, it was created by a violinist, actually, and I think she was involved with the organization for many, many years. So when you get somebody that truly cares, that's been around, that has made that important foundation for the organization, and then you have people that take the lead, that believe and continue to work hard. And obviously, not only that, you need a very mission that truly is important for the community. I think you have an organization that is sustainable, right? There are many other things that are important, but I think that those, you know, the foundation and then the very committed leadership has brought it to where it is today.
Good. Siobhan Wyatt has a great question about social media and fundraising. I mean, have you seen, have you used that very much, Deborah? And how important is it?
I think it's mostly to make people aware. Recently, I'm actually on the board of a small nonprofit.
Which one? What's the name of it?
It's founded by Anna and Jonathan, Prelude Music Foundation.
Oh, yes.
It's very small and actually started last year. And one of the things we did was actually to do an online campaign. And I can't remember the website that we used, but
Did you make any money on that online
we
campaign?
did. We had a goal of 15,000 and we made the goal.
That's sort of
15.
amazing.
Yeah, so I know.
I was going to guess
Now,
1,500.
No, 15,000. But let me tell you, that was a lot of work. It probably will work with this type of group maybe once a year. It won't work more than that.
Yeah.
We worked very hard in creating urgency and also telling them exactly what that money will cover. So, it's 15,000 specifically for this. So when you do kind of online fundraising, you're kind of looking a little bit more on the of buying something, right? Rather than only helping. It's helping and buying kind of combined, I would say. Yeah, but that's been my only experience. Yeah, other than that, it's just that relationship.
We're going to be hearing more and more, though, about that.
I think so.
Yeah. Sean wants to know, what do you like most and least about your current position?
Oh, my goodness. That's tough.
I know.
Okay,
We ask the tough questions here. That's what I'm saying.
What I like the most is the big goal that truly energizes me. It's such a big, hairy goal. What I don't like is that I don't have really an assistant.
You don't like that?
So I have to do it all.
Can I have an assistant, please?
Yeah, I have to do it all. Yeah, so even the little things. So
yeah. Jonathan wants to know, Jonathan Holland, do you have a best fundraising tip? I mean, is it all about relationships? Is that really the best fundraising tip?
I would say for me, yes. The best fundraising tip for me is to care about the person that is on the other side. When I visit with a donor, I not only tell them about the project, that actually happens for 5-10 minutes at the most. Mm-hmm. We talk about their lives, right? Mm-hmm. You develop that relationship. And it's interesting how people, I remember when, okay, let me get it together. So, I have a wonderful couple that I'm still friends with at Mercury, right? And the way we develop the relationship is to a point where they're now pretty much coming to my house still, acting as grandparents to my children, that kind of thing. So, and, it's tricky when it comes to that point, right? Because at times it's harder than to ask for that gift, right? But what has happened with them is that it becomes a yearly gift to the organization, right? And then kind of that extra connection with me where they just still feel so connected, both to Mercury and to my family. So yeah, it's relationship building. That's tip number 1.
Yeah, very important. Latrina Dorsey wants to know about the challenges when you went from music, being a musician, and I remember you talking about these challenges because it was a continuing challenge, musician to executive director. What was the hard thing and maybe the easy thing about that? Because you still had a longing to be in the orchestra sometimes.
The transition was difficult. And actually, when I became executive director, I realized that my violinist career was not going to really happen. Mm-hmm. It was a decision that I made and actually a shift that I was okay with. So I've played with Mercury a couple of times, but not really frequently. Actually, it was quite infrequent. Transitioning from a violinist career.
And you were a nervous mess whenever you did it, I remember.
Yes.
Because you practiced.
Well, going back to that, but transitioning from a violinist to being an executive director, we're talking about completely different skills.
Yeah.
As a violinist, I learned about music. I learned how to analyze music. I learned how to be in a room by myself practicing for 8 hours, right? As an executive director, you sit down in front of a computer, or you go and talk to people, or you actually have to convince people to do something. So the skills were completely different. I think it helped me that I had a wonderful mentor, who was there for me. Not only I had Bob, yes, he was my mentor, but also some other people and some classes that I took. I actually came here and I took an arts organization class.
Oh, wow.
I went to Rice and did the line program there. And just as you mentioned before, just continuing learning, not only from classes, but also from people, making sure you knew who to call. I mean, I remember calling you many times, Bob, where I said, I have no idea what I need to do here. And you were there for me.
Yeah, mostly.
With the answer.
And then I would say, I have no idea. What do we do? So, Harry Davis wants to know about the board chair's role. Generally, for fundraising and development, the board chair is a big leader.
It's a big leader, yeah. And you need to have the right chair at the right time. I believe that very, very vividly. Yeah. We started with a wonderful chair who was there for 7 years. Yeah. And I think that gave the big foundation to Mercury as well. Then we moved to Bob as chair. And I had you there when we truly were making a transition to becoming kind of this small little organization to that mid-sized, rather large organization. Right. And the fact that you had done it before and you knew how to make that leap was very essential for our organization. Then after that, we actually transitioned to a board member who was able to make substantial financial commitment and kind of look at Mercury from the perspective, not from the working organization, right, but from the dream organization, rather coming from the top down, but from the dream down, I would say. And then after that, I worked with another board member, and that was my last chair, who was instrumental in shaping the plan for the future. So I was lucky up to a point. I was strategic in seeing who was going to be my next chair in order to continue to move the organization forward. Yeah. So they're key in opening doors, but they're also key in kind of helping you with the board. They're key in telling you what's not looking right. That's very important. And they're also your right hand when you're having a difficult situation.
And I think you and I have both seen other organizations where bad board members, sometimes bad board chairs, but there is more selection there. But certainly bad board members can be a disaster for an organization where so much time is taken up dealing with this board member. I mean, I've seen very powerful organizations in town that go through board struggles, and as an organization, they're no longer viable. So it's sort of an interesting. Ebu Aswaru wanted to know about how do you get the whole board to participate in fundraising? Because, we've seen a lot of times where people say, oh, foundations like to see the whole board giving. I mean, that's sort of the start. But how do you get the whole board engaged?
Right. Well, that's a great question. I'm glad he asked that question. So
that's a she.
She.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
So how did I get them to participate? One, you establish guidelines, right? You want for them. Some organizations have the give and get or get. We had the give and get type of approach. I believe that as a board member, you have to give to the organization. It's essential. It really is essential because it demonstrates that you truly believe in this cause. But then from then on, I actually had issues with some of my board members that were really not doing the fundraising job. So at one point, I sat down with my development director at the time, and we came up with a plan for each. So what we did is that we visited one-on-one and we said, okay, these are the different fundraising opportunities. Where do you think you can make a difference? Where do you feel comfortable in working with us, right? And then we went back, we created that plan. It's a very simple one-sheet form that was sent back to the board member and said, okay, we're gonna check in with you every so often, or let us know how it's going. We want to be able to work with you on what you determine you can do for the organization. And I think that was really key in getting them engaged, in getting them giving them an understanding of really what they needed to do for the organization in a very specific way, right? And then feeling great about themselves because they were able to accomplish something that was important.
Yeah. And what seemingly is the most difficult thing to do, to sit down and ask for something, is indeed one of the really more effective things, right? And bringing another board member to help with that ask. But people like individual attention, and they know they're on the board for a reason. and they've heard other board members talk about the need for fundraising. And so just saying, how can you help us this year? And how can you give a meaningful gift? That's people want to hear that question, and they want to answer it, and they want to please you, which I think it seems painful, and it might be painful, but the meeting is not that painful.
No.
And the results are often more than what you would expect.
Yeah.
Which
You
is really
sit
nice.
down and you say, would you, I mean, after you talk and
You
everything's
visit
going
for half an
well.
hour first.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then you say, would you consider a gift for this particular program? Is this something that is in line with what you would like to do for the organization? And, you know, usually you don't talk anymore, right? That's key. Fundraising 101, no, don't say anything else. Is their time? They need to speak next, right? So, but after that, usually there's a yes. You know, there might be a maybe. It's not the right time right now. Come to me in 2 or 3 months. I'm still waiting for this to materialize. That type of thing. And if it's a no, what happens is that it's just a no until you get a yes, right? Some people will tell you it's a no because, you know, I've had a situation where I got a no because he was just learning that he had cancer.
Oh,
you
wow.
know, so give me some time, you know, to be with my family, to understand what's happening next. It's a no now, but it might be a yes later. Actually, that person is right now chairing the Mercury Gala.
Wow.
So, you know, you look at that and you say, it's just an opportunity, even that no, to learn more about the person on the other side. So
Very
don't be too nervous about it.
Yeah. Let me ask a last question. Marissa has a question about funding from state and federal government.
Yeah.
The arts organizations, do they get much funding from government?
We get city through the
City money.
Yeah, city money from the occupancy tax, hotel occupancy tax. We get state through the Texas Commission on the Arts.
How much are we talking about?
Oof.
I know it's not that big, right?
7% for Mercury. 7%.
7% of the annual budget
came from city and government funding.
And do you think that 7% of the opera, 7% of the museum it's significantly smaller
Oh
than
yeah,
that?
yeah. It was because our budget was significantly smaller.
So it's
than
not
theirs.
enough to really
No, it
run an
doesn't make a
organization.
dent.
It's just little.
No, in Europe it's very different,
Right.
right? But not here. In here, in I guess anywhere in the States, it's just not. It's important, but yeah, it's not a large amount by any means.
So this is the toughest part of the evening, sort of our final questions of the evening. First question, your favorite restaurant in Houston?
Pascal.
Pascal, you like
Yeah.
Pascal? Wow, you know, that's right near my house.
Yeah, I know. I
So-
love that place. I go there with my husband, and it feels like Paris, you know,
Yeah.
inside, although it's Italian, but it really
Yeah,
feels
yeah.
like Paris for me. And we love the risotto and the beets. So
Wow.
yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's a great little place. They're going to move. You know, they're moving to a new place.
I did not know that.
They bought a new house that they're redoing on Westheimer.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And is there a best kept secret place or thing about Houston?
Well, I'm an
you?
arts advocate, so I'm going to tell you that the best kept secret
Okay.
is the arts organizations. I mean,
Yeah.
I would.
So outside of Mercury and young audiences, what is your favorite arts organization?
Okay, let's see. What comes to mind right away? I love Hopestone.
Oh yeah,
They're
they do some
wild.
nights. Yeah, Jane.
I'm not gonna say the big ones. I'm gonna say the smaller ones. I love Diverse Works. I love Project Row Houses.
Yeah.
You know, it's so diverse. It truly
Mm-hmm.
is. Houston it's quite special.
And there are a lot of little arts. Even those are sort of the well-known little,
Yeah.
but there's some even smaller that do
smaller
some
ones.
amazing
Yeah.
things. You know, it's
Yeah, I can think of many.
arttown.com is sort of a
Art-
good
yes.
little place to go see some of those things. So Deborah, when they make, you know, the Deborah Lugo story in Hollywood, who will play you in the movie?
You know, Bob, I thought about that question and I really have no idea. You tell me. They should tell us.
Yeah. You don't have any idea?
One time, somebody said, well, you look like that lady from the family something, like Sofia Vergara. I ended up,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, well, I think
It's
you
just
don't
your
have
accent.
it right. I'm like, no, I really don't. No, so I have no idea. I haven't been able to find that person.
Okay. Well, we'll keep looking for you, and we'll. So thank you so much for being
My
here
pleasure.
in the studio with us, and thanks for all the work that you do, and thanks for being here. Take care.
Thank you.
All righty. Hey, we'll see you guys next time here on the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. Keep up all the great work that you're doing, and take care.